Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Future Tech podcast. It's me, Charlie Sell, the board director of Major Group, where I get a chance to talk, speak, and share ideas with thought leaders from around the world within technology, and today specifically around quantum technology. So I'm really pleased to have Simon Phillips with me today. Simon is the CTO of Oxford Quantum Circuits, and Oxford Quantum Circuits are an international global business specializing within quantum technology with a tagline of putting quantum into the hands of humanity. So how do we actually move from the myth and the unknown of what quantum is into the hands of everyday people and the careers that come from it, which obviously is a key part of our podcast. So Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Charlie. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. And now let's jump straight into it. I know we were speaking a bit about your story into tech, and it's a bit of an unusual one. So please tell us a bit about how did you get into technology and specifically quantum?
Yeah, no, it's I think I've taken probably the least traditional route into quantum computing, and I guess it all started, if I wind back way back when I was at school, and I was kind of massively into computing and specifically video games, and there wasn't a massive video games industry at the time. There were a few people making games, and a couple of kind of known companies and things, but it really was we used to call it like the bedroom industry, right? You'd make a video game in your bedroom, you might sell someone might make some money from it. It was really kind of new. And I kind of grew up in a world where we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of computer games, but I was fortunate enough to have a computer, so you start playing around and developing your own games. You sort of work out how to program a computer, how to make it work, how to kind of copy an arcade machine and move sprites around and things like that. And I was really fortunate that I had the ability to do that. I then had a bit of a kind of weird career trajectory in that I left school quite early, so I didn't go to university and do any kind of traditional qualifications. But I got into video games. I sent a letter to a local video game company and basically said, "Hey, look, I can make games. Here's a demo of something I'd written." They called me up and invited me over, and the interview was basically, "Here, do this thing." And it was like, so I sat down with a computer with someone that was much more older and scarier looking and said, "Look, this is how we do it." And they were great, and they kind of offered me the job there and then on the spot. And I was, a young teenager, and suddenly I was making video games, and I was very fortunate in that career that the industry kind of picked up a lot. It became, it's now bigger than the movie and the music industries put together in terms of its revenue generation. And, computer games have become part of everyday life. In fact, they're not even really games anymore. They're just a form of entertainment that, everybody can play and access and things like that. And I was fortunate enough in that career journey to make some really good video games with some good companies. I had the opportunity to start my own business when I was in my early 20s. And that kind of came from, there was this kind of cycle in the video game industry that companies would grow really huge, and then a new machine would come out and then they'd have to downsize and so on. So we all got made redundant one day, and we all kind of sat around and said, "Look, we know what we're doing. Let's start our own company with a couple of friends." And what's now become quite a famous tagline of mine of how hard can it be? So we decided to start a business, and we started making some video games, and it was really quite successful. And I've been doing that, I think, for about 25 years or so. And then as part of that journey through video games, and that's developing, publishing, setting up businesses in China and kind of doing all this fun stuff around the world. And then through that, I then met Alana, the CEO of Oxford Quantum Circuits, and she was just getting into OQC when it had first started. So she was kind of brought on as the CEO, and I got talking to her about that. And really the conversation was around kind of business advice, if you like. So I was kind of helping her work out, how to structure the company, how to, work commercially and things like that. And then the more we got talking, the more you realize actually this quantum stuff is phenomenal. There's a world where we always thought we'd change the world with video games, and through talking to Alana, it was clear that actually this technology is going to be like a light bulb to a candle. So I got chatting to her, and she sort of invited me to get involved with the business. And I think I started as a commercial consultant with OQC. And bearing in mind at this point, I didn't know anything about quantum. I'd kind of, did my first thing when I was speaking to Alana was I better go home and Google what all these qubits are about, and how this stuff works and what have you. And you very quickly kind of pick up enough to know how significant the technology is going to be. And so through talking to Alana, I got involved with OQC really early on. Then as I kind of moved over full time to the business, I kind of thought, I've been in the video games industry long enough now. I can move into a new industry because it's super exciting, and it reminded me of when I used to make video games as a young boy. Right, there's exciting technology that's brand new and no one really knows how it works, and that's really cool. Then I came on full time as the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, which was a bizarre thing, and really that was, you know, the experience I'd had at running businesses and you know, kind of managing the finances of business. OQC had just raised some seed money, so we were kind of building a strategy around the finances. And it kind of latterly turned out as the company grew, and we were like 5 or 6 people back then, and now we're nearly 100 people at OQC. As the strategy kind of grew, the financial strategy grew, it really turned into, this is a technology strategy actually. And, you know, we're at a size now where we've got some fantastic technical leads in the business. So people that understand the physics, people that understand software much better than I've ever been able to program or code. And we kind of built all these different teams out. And it's like, okay, now the thing that really excites me is running the technology strategy. So I moved over to be the CTO. And frankly, it's the coolest job in the world, I think, right? So we get to do things that people have never done before. We're kind of, you know, carving this world of how people are going to use quantum computers, what quantum computers can do, and things like that. It's super, super exciting, but a very unconventional route into it. So typically the business has a lot of like physics PhDs, or, you know, people with backgrounds in electrical engineering, and, you know, lots of people coming through academia, but we've also managed to bring in people from industry as well. And I think one of the things we do really differently at OQC compared to some of the other quantum technology companies is we realize that we want to commercialize this technology as well as just develop its kind of core competencies. So really taking it from the lab, you know, from academia and that kind of world into the commercial world, where we want people to start using this technology. We want to explain it to people. We want to move away isn't the right word, but not just talk to the people in the quantum circles about quantum computing. We want to talk to everyone about quantum computing. So we brought people in from the, you know, the automotive industry. We've got people from telecoms, we've got people from finance industries, and kind of putting all that diversity of thought together makes us a really, really exciting place, actually.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I can see the passion just from how you're talking about it, let alone knowing a bit about OQC and the world of quantum. And as you said, so when you first sparked Alona, and you didn't know much about quantum, and now obviously it's your passion. For many of our listeners, they'll be in the same boat right now, where a lot of people have heard about it, they know about it, but they may not really understand it. Are you able to, just for the benefit of our listeners, give that sort of that broad summary of what quantum is?
Yeah, I think, I mean, without getting too deep in it, I think, you know, the world of quantum mechanics is very different to the kind of macro world, if you like. So at the moment, classical computers that work on, you know, fundamental logical principles of, you know, everyday life. So you end up with bits, you set your bits, you know, you can build whatever numbers you want out of bits, and you kind of, you know, add your bits together and so on and so forth. And in the quantum world, we have these things called qubits, so quantum bits, and they enable you to do things in line with the very core of nature, if you like, so quantum mechanics. And effectively what that means to a computer user is you can have your qubits set in a 1 or a 0 state, or you can set them anywhere in between at the same time. So you can be 1 and 0 at the same time. You can then entangle them with other qubits. When I affect one qubit, it actually affects 2 qubits that are entangled, and they can be, you know, 1 or 0 or both at the same time. So effectively, you've got this huge exponential ability to process data compared to classical bits, where you just set them to a 1 or a 0. So what am I trying to get at? So effectively, that you can solve problems or do calculations that are just not possible in classical computers. So if we look at simulating drugs, or, you know, we have a good example around a caffeine molecule, which has 95 electrons on it. You can't, all those interactions between all those electrons, you just can't model on a classical computer today. Even the world's biggest supercomputers aren't powerful enough to process all the iterations of it. But because quantum computers have this ability to process exponential data and actually work in the same way that, you know, the basis of molecules work, we can simulate a caffeine molecule pretty much, you know, in real time almost. So I say we can. Quantum computers are still very early today, and this is the I guess the messaging is that, you know, we've got a quantum computer online at the moment called Lucy. It's an 8-qubit machine, and this year we're launching our next generation of quantum computers which have more and more qubits. We need to have hundreds of thousands of qubits or millions of qubits to really simulate caffeine molecules properly, but the fundamentals are there. Like, we can demonstrate that we can do this kind of stuff, and, you know, this technology exists. So we're going to find a world where we're going to be able to do things that have never been done before. We're going to be able to change the way we think about materials discovery, drug discovery, optimization problems. There's another classic traveling salesman problem where if you had a salesman who wants to go to like 10 different cities, in a certain order and get back and do it on the shortest possible time. There's things like that classical computers still can't calculate today because it's just exponential combinations of things to do, and quantum computers will just be able to do it. So really, we're talking around a big step change in technology. It's got a while to go, but the fun thing now is these things exist. Quantum computers are there. You can log on to them and send code to them and start experimenting with them today, which is exciting.
And is there, a lot of what people are talking about now, and again, a lot of our listeners are passionate around things like ESG, environmental, social governance, and like how we can really sort of future-proof the planet even. And it sounds that the knowledge I have of quantum is, because of its capacity, it fits so well in being able to solve challenges that we still haven't been able to solve yet, whether that's the carbon footprint, whether it's medicine, whether it's really going to leapfrog or accelerate our learnings to, well, potentially protect the planet, if not many, many other things.
That's exactly right. And there's kind of two really exciting angles to that. I think there is the world where we can simulate things, exponentially deeper than classical computers. So when we talk about modeling, weather modeling or flood modeling, and that kind of knowledge we can gain from that is going to be a huge step forward. The other really thing that I get quite excited about, actually, so we have this thing called quantum advantage, which is demonstrating a quantum computer can do something a classical computer can't, and Google kind of claimed quantum supremacy a few years ago, and actually classical computers kind of wound up their performance a little bit and kind of fought back and things like that. But for me, the really exciting thing is there's these new problems that we've never been able to solve before, but equally there's some things a quantum computer that can do the same as a classical computer, but for a lot less power consumption. And I think that's the one thing we've learned through our data center strategy and all this kind of thing, that you can have, a few aisles of high performance compute doing, some optimization routine for, hundreds of kilowatts of power, if not megawatts of power. And actually you can replace all of that with a quantum computer that uses 10 kilowatts of power. So there's a world where, there's this thing we want to do, this quantum advantage, quantum supremacy, solve climate change, but actually we can do a lot of really, well, not mundane things, but just optimization problems for just less power. And I think that's a really powerful thing as well, quantum computers. There is a world as well where we know that quantum computers will only ever really coexist with classical computers. Like, you have to run the two things together to get, a proper usable quantum computer, if you like. So we're not going to replace classical computing in that sense, but actually we can do a lot of the tasks that high performance compute can do for a lot less power. Which is super exciting when it comes to, you look at, all of the cloud operations. Even this podcast we're doing today, we're using, thousands of servers around the world to kind of host video and audio and things like that. And actually, it's a lot of power consumption that really doesn't get spoken about a lot. When you start saying, actually, rather than a megawatt of power for that, we could do that with 10 kilowatts of quantum computing power. That's really powerful.
And again, I just couldn't agree with you more on that point, because it is this unknown reality that the size of these data centers, the server farms, the energy that gets used by it, and there's a great example of people talking about emails, like when people are saving irrelevant emails, and when you add it up all around the world, the amount of storage that we're using, and if it's being hosted in traditional data centers, it's just compounding itself, isn't it? Whereas so the technology alone with quantum, beyond all of the advancements, just that energy saving, it's a no-brainer. And definitely. So for many of the young our listeners, they're thinking about careers in quantum. What would you say are sort of the main career opportunities? What are the main roles that sort of fit in quantum?
So as I said earlier, the really exciting thing at the moment is these quantum computers exist and you can start using them. And I think the really exciting opportunity for anyone at the moment looking to get into quantum computing is actually, there's a world of like software development, quantum, we call it like quantum information development. So writing applications for quantum computers, because not a lot exists at the moment. So it's a very new technology and there's this real opportunity to learn how to program a quantum computer. It's very different in its thinking to a classical computer, but I wish I had my brain that I had when I was 15 years old. I'd love it today, and just be able to kind of really think about how to write something that takes advantage of quantum processors. But I think there's a real good opportunity today to, go online, find a quantum simulator, log onto a quantum computer and just learn how to program one and start thinking about writing applications. Because there's in 5, 10, 15 years time, there's going to be this huge industry of people writing applications, and it's really new today. So there's an opportunity today to start thinking about it, start learning it, a bit like I did when I got into video games, in that you could see this industry coming, and this the same thing's going to happen today. And the timing now is brilliant because there's a lot of resources online to start playing with quantum computers. And as they get more and more powerful, your skill set goes with it. So I'd say that the thing to do is just to play with the quantum computers. Just, get yourself online, have a look. There's some great like free software kits that you can download. There's lots of simulators online. You can access lots of hardware as well nowadays. It's pretty easy to actually log onto the computer and actually try things out for real. But for free, you can use simulators and things and just start learning it. Just get yourself into it, I think is the main thing. And for our company, generally we're a hardware company, so we don't write applications in-house. We have application specialists. There's lots of really cool things from a hardware point of view, but it's kind of harder to get into hardware, right? Because you can't just go and get yourself a fabrication facility and build a quantum processor and things like that. But for sure, starting to use the computers and start learning how to write it, and that will be an enormous career path going forwards, I think.
Yeah. And again, I couldn't agree with you more. And as you said, the 15-year-old self, where you haven't been preconditioned or we haven't gone so far down a set of software engineering principles within traditional computing, to have that open mind. I couldn't agree with you more in the fact that
and I'd like to think that a lot of it's quite funny when I look at I'll talk about the video games industry quite a lot. When I got into it, though, you could do computer science courses, but there wasn't, you learned Pascal at school or something like that, but there was nothing really industry specific. Nowadays, you can go and do a degree in computer game design, which it still blows my mind that, that's how far it's come. And I think at the moment, outside of, going to university and doing a PhD in physics, I'd like to think it won't be long until, high schools can start teaching quantum information or start, introducing quantum things, because the resources are going to be there for them to do it, right? So that you can have an education portal to a quantum service and actually allow people to start playing with it. And I think there's a real opportunity as well for the UK to be a superpower in this as well. I think, we've got great technology in the UK. We've got a willingness to do it all. We just need to, let people play with this stuff. And I think, had I not had a computer when I was younger, who knows what I would have done. It was just because I could touch it and play with it and, get it wrong a few times, write some code, crash the computer and yada, 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 and you kind of learn how to do it. And there's that opportunity today for quantum computers as well.
And it sounds to me, you mentioned earlier that not only do you have people within from academia, but you also have quite diverse people from automation and finance. And do you think that also means quantum will provide more, it'll become more accessible? You won't, thinking, because it's so varied. So young people who are studying electrical engineering can get into it, as well as people who are studying many other STEM type subjects.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of have this saying that not all problems are quantum problems, and we want to try and demystify the word quantum, that it can be quite daunting for some people because, I don't have a PhD in quantum physics, therefore I can't do it. But, we write software, we write cloud access software, we write compilers, we write optimizers, we build our own electronics to control the quantum computers. So we have, career paths like lab technicians, where you can come in and actually just help physically build the thing. So putting control cards into a chassis, bringing it up, uploading firmware to it, running some protocol tests and things like that. And then suddenly you're in an electrical engineer team surrounded by people that've got years of experience, and you can start learning what they do. Or even with the, we have a team of quantum engineers that design and do all the simulation on the processors. But again, there's a pathway through, again, sort of that sort of technician route of helping and assisting. And basically, if you're passionate about something, you can go a long way. And I think that's what it is. And we kind of have a really, really cool way of hiring, that we hire really on kind of people's values and emotional intelligence as well. And I think, and it's funny, actually, I never really knew what the word for it when I was younger. I always used to say when I was in business, as long as I can talk to someone, it doesn't really matter what their skills are, because I can explain it and I know you get it. And what we're really talking about there was, it's emotional intelligence. As long as someone is emotionally intelligent, you can actually learn the rest. You can't learn how to be emotionally intelligent as such, but if you're passionate about something, you can get in, right? I think that's the main thing. There's lots of different routes in without necessarily having to go and do a PhD in physics. There's plenty of routes in, and we have quite a wide remit. I mean, even today I've been speaking to project engineers. So there's some people that have come from, you know, more traditional construction engineering and things like that. But what they really know is, actually, I know how to run a project, and a project's a project, whether you're building a house or building a computer or what have you. So we have a team of people that just do project engineering for deploying quantum computers or integrating new bits of technology into the stack and things like that. So there's plenty of ways to get in, and then it's just about learning, right? You're surrounded by people that are all passionate about what they're doing. You learn new skills, and yeah, you can kind of come in that way.
Yeah, and that leads so nicely into then the part of the podcast where we give that career advice, or the how people can stand out. And again, emotional intelligence, so the ability to be to pick up on that. Completely agree with you. That can't be taught. Many other things can. What other bits of advice would you give to someone who wants to get into the industry, whether it's from the technician route all the way through to academia? When you're interviewing, when you're looking, what one or two bits of advice would you give?
I think it's funny, isn't it? Because the things that really resonate with me are people that have done the research, so they understand what it is we do. So no one wants to feel like you're number 75 on a list of 100 people that you've applied for a job. So just knowing who you're talking to, and it, there's a great I do enjoy when I interview people and I notice that they've pinged my LinkedIn a few days before, like that's really good. They've actually had a look at me. They've seen my history. We can have a conversation. And actually through doing your research, you kind of learn very quickly that it's okay for someone applying to say, actually, I don't know how to build a quantum computer because I've never done it before, but I'm really keen. I see you've done this. I like this. And, kind of being able to have a conversation is probably the easiest thing. I think in the world of the other thing that I'd always go for as well is if someone can just show me what you can do, as in write a bit of code, send me a code snippet and say, I logged onto your quantum computer and I wrote this little routine. It doesn't really do much, but I understand it and I know kind of how to operate something. That goes a long, long way, rather than, most people, anyone can write a CV, right? So I think it doesn't matter what your background, you can make the best looking CV in the world. That's great. Do your research, talk like a human, talk like you're talking to a human. And if you can demonstrate something, that goes a long, long way. And that would be my top tip for quantum computing is go online, use a quantum computer, and then you'll instantly know so much more than anybody else about it.
Those two bits, so doing your research, showing what you can do, and as you say, going online. It doesn't need to be the pitch perfect piece of code demonstration. It's about the principles, isn't it? And it's about understanding and showing that you've taken the time.
And then actually, in some ways, it's nicer when things aren't perfect, because perfect sometimes looks like you might have got it from somewhere else, or you don't really understand it, or use ChatGPT to write a bit of code, or again, using resources like ChatGPT to say, right, how does quantum information work? How do I do this? And some really good tools for kind of explaining it to you. But be a human, admit that you don't know everything. No one knows everything. There's not a single person in the world that knows everything, but just sort of saying, I don't really understand how it works, but I tried this out and it was really interesting, or I'd love to get involved with this. And be passionate and just be human, I think is the
Well, Simon, how time flies, because that's the podcast yet again has flown through, and I have to say it's just so interesting. There's many, doing this for 6 series now. We've had so many great guests, but this has been one that is really looking at the future, and quantum really, really is where it's going. And as we mentioned in the middle part of it, the positive impacts this is going to have on the environment, let alone future careers and the next evolution. It just to me sounds so exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I wake up excited every day that, we've got this chance and opportunity to do something new, and that's super exciting for me. And it's a real privilege to be in a position where I get to work with so many talented people and just kind of say, do you know what, we're going to go and change the world today, and this is how we're going to do it. And then it's very powerful. But it's super exciting. So thank you for inviting me along.
Well, thank you for being a guest, and to our listeners, that is another episode of our Future Tech podcast. So as always, the podcast is shared with our STEM Ambassador Association on the Arrows Group podcast website and also on LinkedIn. And this, again, just one more, a thank you to Simon for being on the show.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone who's listening.